In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the color wheel, but first things first, you know what, let's just turn this off for a second. Let's just have a heart-to-heart with this black screen here for a sec. I just want to say, if you guys have never made a color wheel before, I don't want you guys to use this video as an excuse not to make one. If you've never made one, go ahead and grab your traditional materials, you know, the paints, the paper, whatever you have, and make this for yourself. You will never learn more than when you actually have these physical things in front of you and you're physically mixing these colors together. That being said, let's take a look at what we're going to be looking at in this video. I'm going to do this video a little differently. We're not going to have a whole tutorial kind of thing in here. I'm really just going to explain what the color wheel is, and we're going to take a look at some of the color schemes. So like I just said, we're looking at the color wheel. So what that is going to be primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. And then beyond that, we're going to talk about color schemes. So we have complementary color schemes, analogous, split complementary, we have triad, and we're going to talk about the difference between warm versus cool colors. So jumping straight in, let's start with primary colors. Now, primary colors are going to be the three colors that you start with that create every other color. So if you were to have a pure red, a pure blue, and pure yellow color tube of paint, you could then create ideally any color that you will ever need to make. A lot of people say this is a way to save money on paint and stuff like that. I don't necessarily agree. I definitely think that you will find that there are going to be manufactured colors that you can't exactly recreate with just these three colors. But overall, if you have these three colors, you're pretty set in terms of being able to make anything. Next, we have our secondary colors. Now, the secondary colors are kind of exactly what they sound like. They're the colors that directly come from your primary colors. You know, for example, when you mix blue and yellow, it goes and becomes green, right? Now, if you mix red and blue, you get violet. And then, you know, we can keep going here, right? Just to finish this off, if you mix yellow and red, you're gonna get orange. So these are your secondary colors that are created straight off from your primary colors. And then lastly, to fill in the gaps of our color wheel here, you have the tertiary colors. Now, your tertiary colors are the colors that are then just created from the secondary colors. Tertiary just meaning the third form of colors. Hopefully you guys can kind of understand that this is just an infinite process. You can definitely go ahead in and find colors that are then made in between each one of these. But this is, in a standard sense, the color wheel that we generally look at as artists when we're kind of discussing the idea of color theory, and some color schemes. This is going to be the color wheel that we look at that's going to give us the answers to what we're going to talk about next. And just a really quick side note, because I don't think anyone really talks about this, the idea of like, why is it yellow orange or yellow green or blue green? Why isn't it green blue, etc.? Generally, the idea here just being that the primary color is the boss, all right? So the primary color is the OG, and that's the one that's going to take the lead in the title. So, you know, you're like, red is my primary, so then it's going to be red orange, and it's going to be red violet. It's not going to be violet red. So if you guys ever wonder that, I don't see too many people talking about that. I know it's not really anything to do with art, you know, it doesn't really matter, but just so you guys know, that is the reason. All right, so just going straight through, now that we have been introduced to our color wheel over here, we understand how that color wheel is created and what we're looking at. Let's talk about some color schemes that we get when we look at the color wheel. Now, one of the most popular ones that you've probably heard of is going to be complementary. So all complementary means is it's two colors that are straight across from each other on the color wheel. Now, what does that mean, straight across from each other? Well, if you want to think of the color wheel pie slices here as arrows, you have green that is pointing straight up this way, and that means it's pointing into red, and then right there, red is pointing into green. Those are straight across from each other on the color wheel. They are complementary colors, right? So you have red and green. That's one of the most popular ones. We definitely see that all the time around Christmas. Another one that we see not too often, but it's a pretty popular one, is you're gonna have blue and orange. And then very popular sports team has crowned this one. We have violet and yellow. Now, of course, any of these other color schemes can be put into there. You can take red violet and mix it with yellow green, and then that's also going to be a complementary color. Anything that's across from each other on the color wheel works, including if you were to go in and find something like I don't know, I guess this would be violet, blue, violet, and yellow, orange, yellow. And those right there, because even though those are mixes of yellow and yellow, orange, and violet and blue, violet, those are in between those two colors. They would be complementary colors to one another. Now, one thing that I do want to mention with this is you just want to be careful when you use this color scheme because it can be super overpowering. These are two colors that highly contrast each other extremely. You put green next to something red, if that red object is kind of small and the green is really big, it's going to make that red just pop really bright and seem just like obnoxiously in your face. Now, you could totally want that appearance. You could want that contrast in your picture, and that's mostly how artists use it, is when they want to boost up some contrast within their picture. But again, you just want to be careful, because if you're not too careful, you can end up having an overpowering picture because of this kind of play between some complementary schemes here. So just a quick example of what these complementary color schemes can look like together. You have a picture here of just some fruit using the colors that we just talked about, right? We have red and green, blue and orange, violet and yellow. And you can see how bright and contrasting those colors are next to each other. It's almost a little bit abrasive to like look at. It just kind of makes your eyes hurt a little bit. Those colors are really just kind of like vibrating off of each other. Again, though, it doesn't have to be this extreme either when you use it in a picture. You can do it a little more successfully and a little more subtly, as done in this picture, where you do have the blue and the orange color scheme kind of playing off of each other, but it's a little more subtle. It's not so in your face. These colors aren't kind of competing with each other. They're working together. Everything in this picture is blue, except for this really nice scene right here of everyone eating dinner or hanging out, whatever they're doing. And it really draws you into that point in the picture, and you don't have this like sense of vibrating off the page kind of contrast. That's, in my opinion, when you're going for something like playing with complementary colors, this is generally the scheme that I would kind of try to fall into. Next color scheme we're going to look at is analogous color scheme. So analogous color scheme, this one can get a little confusing, but if you just kind of like pay attention just a little bit here, it's pretty simple. So analogous can be any two colors that are next to each other. It can be any three colors that are next to each other, or it can be up to any four colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. If we take from red, like we did, all the way over to yellow, orange, this could be an analogous color scheme. Now, just because I use this for an example does not mean this is the only example that you can use. It goes across the entire color wheel no matter what you want. So red, violet to violet can be an analogous one. Maybe you want violet to blue. This can also be one. If you want green to yellow, that can be one. You can also decide that, you know what, I want another color in there. You can expand it to blue, green, or back that, I want to go over to yellow, orange. You don't want to exceed 4 points usually. This is going to be kind of like your trifecta to kind of keep things in bounds with each other, to make things kind of seem harmonious and they work with each other and they don't kind of play off of each other and they don't start to enter that contrasty zone. Essentially, you're trying to stick away from things that are going to be complementary to each other. Plain and simple, what you just want to understand is that you're not going to make any jumps. So you're not going to go, I want red, red, orange, and then yellow. That's going to be a different kind of color scheme if you were trying to stick with an analogous color scheme for your picture. It just needs to be all right next to each other in your color scheme. So some examples of analogous kind of color scheme art that we found here. I found this abstract piece here. You can see it's kind of going through a range of the greens to yellows. This did kind of add in some like shades and stuff like that, which I'll get to in another video. Don't lose your patience with me. But as you can see here, there's a nice harmonious kind of feeling going on. Similar, we have a painting here, and this one you can see it goes from yellow, yellow, green, green, and then looking into that green, blue kind of area. Now, obviously, there's other things going on in here. There's a couple of colors of, light blue and all that stuff. But the overall dominance of the picture is that green, blue to yellow, green analogous color scheme. And if you guys can tell, like what I was talking about earlier, it gives a really nice, harmonious, connective feeling to the picture. It's like everything in this nature picture is working together. It's from the same place, if that makes sense. So it doesn't feel like red and green, where it's like vibrating off of each other. Everything here is working together to kind of create like a nice, cohesive picture. All right, next on the list, we have split complementary. Now, I did this order of how to list things. You might say, well, why didn't you do split complementary after complementary? Kind of because this is a little more complicated to understand, I feel like. Again, just like the other one, once you get it, you'll get it. But essentially, you're going to take the complementary colors and then you're going to split it off into kind of like a two-pronged fork. That doesn't make any sense explaining that. Let me show you by drawing it out. So let's say we know complementary are going to be red and green, right? So I want to choose red as my main color, and I'm going to go down to the complementary color, which is green. Now to make it a split complementary, we don't use green. What we're going to do is split off to the next one and the other one, the ones that are right next to green. And now your colors are going to be blue-green and yellow-green. This is going to be your example of split complementary. So essentially what you're doing is you're taking that complementary color scheme and then you're just splitting it off to the side of that complementary color. What this does, in my opinion, to the picture is this kind of takes out that over vibrating effect, and it kind of helps to work in your favor towards a little more harmony and just kind of like a little more depth within your picture. But let's keep playing with this so we kind of get the idea here, right? So again, how about I choose something like orange, and what I'm going to do is go over, and we know that blue is going to be the straight complementary, but if we want to do split, we go to blue-violet and we go to blue-green. So then that's going to be our next one. Now again, this doesn't have to stick to secondary and primary. I like to give as many examples here as I can. So let's say I wanted to choose red-violet as my main color here. I'm going to go down to yellow-green, and then we split off into true yellow and true green as our color scheme. And just one more example, but I think from here you guys get the point. Just essentially choosing that main color, whatever you want it to be. It can be orange, it could be yellow, orange, and then you're going to go across the color wheel from it and split it off into that fork. And that's going to get you your split complementary color scheme. So here you have a split complementary color scheme example here. This one's a little obscure for just kind of being a straight split complementary, but it kind of looks like they chose blue-green or some sort of teal as their main color, and then split off into those warm colors for the split. And then here we have a little bit more of a straightforward one, where it looks like red-violet was their main color pick there, and then the green and yellow were the two splits on that split complementary color scheme. So you can kind of see how these colors, they play nicely with each other. They do have that kind of contrasty, complementary kind of color scheme going on, but it's not so, again, in your face, like just kind of like vibrating off the page. All right, and last color scheme that we're going to be looking at in this video is going to be the triad color scheme. So triad is not too dissimilar from what it sounds like. Triad just kind of being like tertiary, where you have three, right? So we're thinking of a triangle kind of shape here. And the way I think of it is you're going to pick a color, skip three, then that's going to be the next color. And it's going to get you three colors. So what does that mean? Of course, these words always sound very obscure until I explain this, right? So let's just go up with what we always choose first. Let's say I choose red. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. We skip those three, and then we land on blue. Then we do it again. 1, 2, 3. Those are skipped, and we land on yellow. Now we already know these 1, 2, 3 would be skipped. So then you have a triangle here, or your triad of colors. So this becomes your triadic color scheme. And again, I'm sure you guys are getting the point by now, but just so I can just further drive this point home, it can be done with any color. So, you know, let's say we want to start with green. Same scenario here. You just go over 1, 2, 3. You got violet, 1, 2, 3. You got orange. And it just keeps going from there and on, right? This is just going to be your triad of color. You're just picking a triangle off of the color wheel that you have in front of you, and that's going to be what you stick with for that color scheme. So this is not an example that you see often in art, but I was able to find some pretty fun examples here. You have an example of Cyclops from X-Men here in a cool triadic kind of color scheme with the red, blue, and yellow. And then another one I found, this one a little more subtle here. And you can see this is kind of an example of how they can work together, right? It's just like that last example that we just went over, where I talked about the green, the violet, and the orange. It's all here, and they used it together in like a really nice, harmonious kind of way. And I think this is honestly the coolest part about learning these color schemes, is that sometimes we go into pictures, we just jump straight in, and then we have no idea what color we're going to choose, right? And then we hesitate, we get stuck, we decide to keep it black and white because we don't really know color schemes. But sometimes it's fun if you limit yourself to these color palettes. And of course there's so many more color schemes out there, but you can get something so beautiful just by picking 3 colors, and just limiting yourself to that, and seeing what, sometimes limiting what you can do can bring out a whole new world of options and ideas. So that finishes our color schemes, but there's one more thing I want to talk about in this video. I'd kind of be remiss as an art instruction video guy if I didn't talk about something like this in a color wheel video, and that is going to be warm versus cool. Now, warm versus cool is essentially the idea of warmer colors versus the cooler colors. The idea here is that there's a lot of color theory that goes behind these kind of things, right? So warmer colors can be anything from joyful, happy, angry, hot, those kind of things. And cool colors can be kind of what you think about, right? Gloomy, cold, sad, morose, whatever kind of things you kind of associate with cool and darker tones and stuff like that. Now, I do want to mention too, this really is a matter of circumstance. It just kind of matters of context of the picture. This doesn't mean that every picture you see that has a blue tone in it is going to be sad. It doesn't mean that, right? But if you're looking at the color wheel, you can see that the warm versus cool colors are essentially just cut straight down from one side to the other. You're going to have your red, violet to the green. Those are going to be about your cool colors there. And then red to yellow, green are going to be your warm colors that you're sticking with. Again, any of these colors can be made to seem a little cooler or warmer, but this is just the general idea of what a warm color is versus a cool color. But it is a really good thing to practice within your pictures if you want to show something that has a little more meaning behind it, if you really want to push the point forward with your audience. As a couple examples, we have a cool picture right here. Everything is blue, it's monochromatic, right? It's nice and cool. This picture has kind of like a sense of like a coldness to it, right? You don't assume that she's warm or sweating or anything like that. You feel like this room she's in is, maybe it's cold, it's creepy, versus something like this picture right here, Vatican, right? So we have something like, we know he's on a lava planet, it's hot, he's angry, but it's just like, it's so much more encompassing of that emotion that he's giving us, that the entire background and the entire light that's reflected off of him and everything around him is red or orange, right? It's just like driving this point home of like, if you didn't know, this dude's pissed off. You should already know, but I'm going to tell you even further. But lastly, again, it's a context situation. This is an example of a warm picture, but it kind of has a sad tone to it, right? You have someone sitting in this warm room, yellow light, sun coming through. But again, you kind of have these aspects that speak of loneliness and sadness and like so much empty space in the room. So of course, I just want to show this example as like, again, it's a context situation. There's so many other ways in art that you can show something like emotion or feeling. So don't just kind of feel like if you put a yellow hue on your picture, everyone's going to be like, nah, she's a happy girl, because that's not the situation, right? We can kind of tell that there's a little more going on to this picture than we understand, and it makes us want to know more. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this color wheel explanation for this video. Yes, I do know that there's a lot more color theory to talk about. We got hues, tints, shades, all that stuff. Those will be coming up in videos very shortly, but I just kind of wanted this one to be nice and quick, just to the point. If you guys never knew what the color wheel was or what it was about, now you do, and then we can kind of move on from this point. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great day. If you have any ideas for videos in the future, whether it's color or anything else, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.